Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our distinguished guests and participants joining us from across the globe. This is me, I'm Firas Diab. I'm the chair of the Young Engineers Future Leaders at the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. And it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you today in the webinar organized by the WFEO committee, which is titled Leveraging Satellite Data to Address Poverty, Innovations, and Impacts. First of all, to begin with, I would like to extend my thanks to Mustafa Shehu, President of WFEO, for his leadership and his vision in fostering global collaboration among engineers to address the world's most pressing challenges. Also, President Mustafa is committed to empowering young engineers and supporting all the initiatives like this webinar. And I look forward to hear his thoughts and guidance during the session. Today, we are also very honored to feature Dr. Catherine Nakalembe. She's an extraordinary leader and innovator in leveraging satellite data to tackle food security, to tackle disaster management and poverty alleviation. Dr. Catherine pioneering work from building machine learning tools to empowering local communities through certain capacity building programs is reshaping the way we approach the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular SDG number 1. And I would like to say that this webinar for the Young Engineers Future Leaders Committee comes today at a crucial moment as we gear up for the World Engineering Day Hackathon 2025, inspiring engineers and future leaders worldwide to design solutions for a sustainable future. And I'm sure that throughout today's discussion, we hope that Dr. Catherine will spark ideas, collaborations, and innovations that will contribute to a world without poverty. Now, without any further talk, I would like to invite President Mustafa Shehu to share his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Engineer Firas Bodewave, the chairman of the Young Engineers Future Leaders Committee of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. To be honest, I have to say that I am very glad with your work as the chairman of this committee, because since your assumption as, into the leadership of this committee, you have always been, up and doing, creating one program or the other, one activity, after the other, raising awareness of young engineers globally, and also increasing their knowledge and expertise in the engineering space. So I want to thank you very much, and I urge you to do a lot more. More so, the world today depends on young engineers like you and others. So to me, this particular webinar comes in a very critical time. In fact, the most appropriate time, especially with the fact that the United Nations has declared 2024 to 2033 as the decade of science for sustainable development, International Decade of Science for Sustainable Development, for which WFEO is a member of the executive committee, where I'm representing WFEO. So webinars like this will help in a very large extent to discover and bring out innovations whereby we use science and engineering to alleviate the sufferings of the global community, especially the issue of hunger. And leveraging satellite data to address poverty, to me, is so important because once you address poverty, you also have addressed hunger, and you have addressed a lot of other issues like health, like social well-being of people. And satellites, and especially if you combine satellite, satellite technology with artificial intelligence applications, can really do a lot, toward this direction, especially in areas like disaster response, where in the events of natural disasters, satellites can quickly assess the damage. Artificial intelligence algorithm can also provide accurate information about affected areas and efficiently manage it. Satellite data also can be used for urban development, where satellite imagery and artificial intelligence can guide urban planning and ensure that infrastructure investment is targeted towards specific areas, especially, when you are targeting the poor, the satellite imagery can, easily, guide you to target those affected areas so that you improve their living conditions. Another area of use, when you have satellite data, is improvement of agricultural productivity. And when you are targeting the reduction of poverty, there's no way you can reduce poverty if you don't improve agricultural productivity. And in that respect, AI-based analysis of satellite data optimizes agricultural practice and increase the yields, for more improved food security. And some other areas like environmental protection also, you use a lot of satellite data and satellite images to help monitor deforestation and environmental degradation. So these are some of the few areas where you can leverage, your skill and knowledge of satellite data to address poverty, using this, engineering innovation. And I'm glad the chairman of this committee has searched globally and found Dr. Catherine Nakalembe, who is also one of our own, because she's from Uganda, and she's much into this knowledge and practice of satellite data to address a lot of issues globally. And it is our privilege and rare opportunity also to have her to address not only the young engineers, because I believe this particular program is not only useful to the young engineers, is also useful to all engineering practitioners, globally. Actually, even beyond the engineering practice, any citizen, any global citizen, will be much interested in what Dr. Catherine is going to tell us in this webinar. So it is my great pleasure and honor also to invite, without further, taking much more time, Dr. Catherine Nakalembe to address us on this very important issue, which is among, the new, fields of engineering, which is being used to address a lot of topical issues towards sustainable development of the global community. So, Dr. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for the kind remarks, introducing me to young engineers and the Federation. The honor is mine, and I'm privileged to be able to connect with not only a different community, but a community that is trying to engage and work with the youth, who are the future, obviously, of our not only planet but our existence as a mankind, but more so who, hold the responsibility and have the potential to heal our planet. And so having that opportunity to learn and understand, broad questions and topics that we are trying to address is really, really important. And I hope some of what I will present will inspire some of you to explore topics, slightly different than maybe how you've been thinking about them. In addition to, remembering that your creativity, your ideas, and the way you approach problems from your personal perspective, from your positionality is actually really important in the sense that the ideas and questions and framing and design of the problems that we're trying to address, sometimes the solutions, not only sometimes, but most of the time, the solutions that really work are solutions that come from very close to where the problem is. So the people that come up with the best solutions are usually people who are from the geographies that are most severely impacted by the enormous challenges that we face. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. And I hope you can see my screen.
Sure, we can see.
And see it fine. Yes.
Clear.
Yeah, you can see it fine.
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah. No, nothing obscuring it. So, if you're in the chat, something we can talk about a little bit at the end is I'm curious what you see in this slide. If you could type in the chat what you see in this slide, like, is there something that pops up to your mind? I'm just going to pause for a few seconds and then maybe I'll try to see, if anybody can see what's in the chat, what everybody might be typing. What do you see? We have some interesting answers in the chat right now. Nothing? Where are the youth? So what I have in here is actually, oh, somebody says they can see some nice paintings. So what is actually in here is not paintings. These are actual images of our Earth. These are images taken with the Landsat satellite. And why it might not be directly visible to you, you can see the word engineering, engineering. That's the word. But what you actually see is the very first image on the left is some sort of blue thing in the ocean somewhere. And this green here in the middle is actually a river. And then we see some cropland here. We see more water in the second E. And then we see probably vegetation a vegetation index showing very bright red, which typically means
I've seen the WFEO also.
Yes, exactly. Yes, now you can actually see it. Yes, so you can see exactly what I mean. So this is I like showing this now because it makes you like admire our Earth in a different way, and it usually touches something. So you can actually type your name and see your name, and if you click on that link, you can type your own name and get a satellite image tile of your name. So I will get down to why. Sort of cover what we're going to talk about today. So the idea of my talk is to kind of give you an idea of how through my research and my work, I'm leveraging satellite data to understand how we can address fundamental questions around poverty, around food security, among other things, disasters, and be able to respond in a way that is proportionate to the size and the scale of the challenges that we are facing. So if you can think about anything you have improved in your life, the only way you can improve it is if you know that it needs improving. So if it's agricultural productivity or water quality, you wouldn't know that your water is polluted unless you've taken some tests and know that there is this chemical in it and I should not be consuming it. So the idea of using satellite data to be able to frame the basis for what we are actually trying to improve or what we're trying to overcome is, I'm hoping that you get that inspiration from this presentation. So, the fundamental things that, I think about a lot, having grown up in Uganda, there, so many challenges that we face, particularly in the global south and developing countries. And these things overlap. So you can't address one problem without addressing another. You cannot achieve broad development or growth or better human outcomes without addressing overlapping, integrated, complicated tasks. And that's, the framing of SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. You can see that even though they might be disjointed, like in order to improve education, technology has a role to play. In order to improve food security, even communication has a role to play. But also, if we're talking about food security per se, how it can intertwine with a lot of goals. So the sentence here is meant to make you think about, if you were hungry, would you be able to study? So SDG 2 and SDG related to education are tied together. When you're hungry, you can't think, and when you are not safe, when, there's conflict in the region where you are, you can't actually think about being hungry. And so there is safety, there is addressing hunger and food insecurity. At the same time, we also want to make sure that people are safe and are able to achieve their full potential. So you aspire to be an engineer, you aspire to be able to learn very complicated tasks and do things that most people would not be able to do, but in order to do them, you need to feel safe. You need to be well fed and not be hungry. So I hope this, kind of stays with you as we go through this presentation. And so in terms of food security, you think about it, where do we stand? So these reports come out every year, and the 2024 report came out already. And these reports are meant to give us a framing for where do we stand? Like, how are we doing? What's our pulse in terms of food security globally? And they give a very good breakdown of gains, losses, as in whether there's been an increase or decrease in some regions or not, whether there's been very significant progress made. And so this one is from 2024. It just came out a couple of months ago, and it is summarizing the state of the world as of the end of 2023. And in that report, this is where we stand in terms of statistics. So globally, the projection is that by 2030, we will have 582 million people who would be food insecure. The status as of 2023, there were 2.3 billion people who were food insecure. So if you think about food insecure, sometimes people think it's like, in most terms, like extreme, hunger and no availability of food, etc. But what it actually is, sometimes it's a very basic of, I do not know where my dinner will come from. I do not know where my breakfast tomorrow will come from, and I will not be able to eat for the next 3 days. So just the fact that you're worried about where your next meal will come, it puts you in a state of food insecurity. It's not a problem that only happens in low and middle income countries. It happens even in developed countries where we have not only food deserts, but we have millions of people who are worried about where their next meal will come from. And we have currently 864 million people are projected to be severely food insecure. So in this classification, you skip meals, have several days of not being able to eat anything. And when massive events like COVID happened, in this case, there was an additional 130 million people who were added to who were food insecure due to COVID. It was an additional 130 million people due to COVID-19. And so the other aspect of it is around distribution, or around the differences in severity across different geographies. And Africa has a disproportionate burden for food insecurity. Latin America is second, and Asia is third. And there is food insecurity, as you can see. There's food insecurity in other regions in the world as well. So in terms of if you think about the complexity, so going back to these overlapping things that sort of compound why some issues are not being addressed. So not only do we have people who were displaced due to conflict and violence, and a lot of people in this context are food insecure, which is a contributing factor to food insecurity. There are people who are also displaced internally within their own countries due to disasters. So this is as of December 2022, people who were displaced globally due to disasters. And so, a whole 108 million people who've been forcibly displaced. And one thing you should notice that these numbers are approximations. There isn't an organization that has all the data. And so sometimes there's an approximation based off of existing conditions, the scale of events, population distribution. And so data becomes really, really, really critical in trying to address this. And let's think about what it means to be when we talk about food security. So it's not just about food being produced in a specific geography. It is food being produced, but is also accessible. So if there is food at your supermarket next door, but you don't have the money to buy it, it means you don't have access to food and you are food insecure. Stability means we might have a great season and all the crops did really well and market stalls are full of nice vegetables, but suddenly, the next season is really bad and it is not stable and the stalls are empty, a couple of weeks after, for example. Another example around quality is another dimension of food security. So if there is let's say some rice that's being produced in a region, however, it is laden with pesticides, it is not nutritious, or you don't have a good diet, balanced diet, so maybe you only consume carbs and not have access to fruits and vegetables, then you are food insecure. So it's very, 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 very complex. And there's so many aspects that have to be understood in order for us to address this very big, broad problem. Because if you have access to poor nutrition, it means consequently you're eating unhealthy food, which translates into you having, health problems. So also being tied to another SDG. And so we have this perfect storm of many, many challenging things, very, very complicated things that we need to address. However, in addition to this, we have become more intelligent. We live in a realm, a world of enormous data sets, enormous tools. We have a lot of, there've been a lot of engineering firsts in terms of being able to make a really critical data, not only data products, but products that could address nutritional deficiencies, lots of medical advances that can overcome very complex diseases. We have, better precision in terms of measuring the scale, the extent, and the severity of events. We're getting more data. We're getting a better understanding of where we stand. Going back to if you don't know how bad things are, you don't know what your response should be. If you had a fever and it is, let's say, 98 degrees or 100 degrees, you can think, well, do I need to go to the emergency room or can I just stay home and take a painkiller? I would feel better. This is exactly what, if you were trying to design, a better processing, like food processing machine, and the region you're in, you're not sure whether it produces 20,000 tons of rice or 1,000 tons of rice. You do not know the scale of the machine that you need to develop. And so we're in this realm where data is, the new oil. It's one of the most important things that we have, because when we know where we stand, we can do a little bit better. And so with these unprecedented challenges, including floods, droughts, etc., we have a lot of data sets that we can use to understand not only deforestation, change, and loss. We can understand the impact of massive floods, the example in the middle from Libya. And these are just images, no analysis has been done. We're just seeing things we would not have been able to see so many years ago, including, the impact of conflict and how, communities are being displaced really, really rapidly, as the example all the way on the right. And so it seems, the point of my talk is not to make you feel depressed about the world and how complicated this challenge is, but it's to sort of give you hope that there is something that you can do and something that you can work on to help address and heal our planet, or at the same time, do something that can help others, better understand the situation. So another framing for this new era of, having unprecedented intelligence is like specifically kind of zooming in now into the work that I do, is we have lots of satellites, lots of satellite data, and lots of methods. And we have, what you see here, the cloud looking like thing is with cloud compute, we're able to process much, much more data. So these visualizations here would not be possible maybe 20 years ago, because we're looking at petabytes of data if you're looking at the entire world, as an example. And so in terms of advances in the field, we're seeing, increased access to data, with coming from tapes in the 70s, going all the way down to like near real time through clouds. In terms of compute, we no longer need to have very fancy computers or HPCs, high performance computing clusters. You can use the cloud, and a lot of tools actually open access that you can actually do this without needing to pay a substantial amount of money to do this. We also have an increase in spectral, so the number of bands, the lenses through which we can see our planet. There's an increase in temporal resolution. We've come from, having like one image every 18 days to having an image every hour in some instances. So we can look at things like rapidly unfolding floods. And then in terms of spatial resolution, coming from very coarse data sets to having sub-meter resolution, to be able to see buildings, and understand damage, for example, to them. And we're also in the realm of having access to global data sets, everything, including forest change, climate change, as well as understanding our forests in a way that is completely unprecedented. Being able to see all the dimensions of, trees within a forest is quite phenomenal. For example, the bottom example from this JEDI, which is a LiDAR instrument that is on the International Space Station, from which we can use to do, 3D mapping of forests around the world. And in our present era, in addition to these increased access, processing, coverage, and resolution, we also have massive opening up of access to the tools. So more open access tools, better access to open access to really critical data sets, et cetera. So we're in this, phenomenal stage that we can do a lot of really interesting things. So to kind of overview like what I do, every day, I kind of like every day, every month, every week is like go through this loop continuously, right? So process data. So we have this long-term record of so many different satellites. We now more and more have to fuse them, process this data to produce, cropland maps, crop conditions assessments, and yield assessments. We want to develop platforms that people can actually access and utilize this data in a much more simplified, understandable way, not the raw data that we get, directly from satellites. And then converting these data sets into things that a policymaker understands. So from a massive processing of an entire country to a few sentences that say, well, we've lost X amount of forest due to this flood. We need to do some restoration in place Y, for example. And my hope is that as we're supporting policy and programs, at multiple scales, we can also get this information to a farmer who needs it in a way that is accessible and understandable to them, maybe a voice message, for example. And so gonna now zoom back again in terms of like, what can we do? So in this image here, when we have the data, process it and make this is like an overview diagram of some of the most commonly used things in terms of Earth observations that we can derive with AI and machine learning. So crop probability, cropland maps, so where are crops in this case? Everywhere that's yellow or orange, very bright, there is, the model is predicting that there is crop. We have yield. It's showing, differences in yield in this place, Kakamega, which is in Kenya. And everywhere that is red shows fields that are highest productivity. In this case, there's 4 tons per hectare compared to the light blues that are 2 and 1 ton per hectare. You want to improve productivity, so you want to know, well, how are we doing in Kakamega? Could we get Kakamega to 8 tons per hectare? And what does it take? And how can we optimize and not over-fertilize just so we can get up to the 8 tons per hectare? We need things like field boundaries in this case. And then there's things like trying to predict and understanding severity of pests, as is shown here, showing area fields that are affected by, this is an example of an irrigated maize field. I know it's irrigated because of the circle. And the ones that are in red are affected with some sort of pests. However, at the same time, there's lots and lots of maps that are being made, and you can utilize things that have already been created. But because we are in this era of democratization, more people can do it. So we can make much better maps and, building on some that have already been created. So this is an example of readily available products for this region. It's not zoomed in all the way, but if you were to zoom in, you would see that the map in the bottom right is closer to the reality in this region. And if you look at the top left, but other products showing information for the same area can see that like this and this one have like no data whatsoever. So if I was to make a policy and use one of these 2 products, my policy would be, well, this area does not need any agricultural inputs. There is no agriculture there. So you want to try to make the best possible. And as I mentioned at the beginning, is that if you're closest to the problem, you would want a phenomenal map for your region and would not accept something like this. So you want to be able to improve on existing ones so that you can get a better product. And so some examples of like work that I've done to try and do this is doing refugee settlement mapping, trying to get towards improving understanding of where people are, where their crops are, and how those crops are doing, and how does fire impact on their livelihoods. So fire is a critical component in this particular ecosystem, and it has sort of like as a plus and a minus. Fires help the soil regenerate, but there are consequences that could include, extensive damage that lead to loss of life. At the same time, you also want to be able to monitor them, because as the ecosystems get drier and drier, fires might not be controllable at all. So just kind of showing an example of what this area looks like. We can also do things like this. In this case, we've been trying to understand impact of war in Tigray on crop mapping. Some of the limitations in the study is not being able to really validate and have absolute confidence that there were crops and then there were no crops. But you can see here by doing image interpretation, we can see differences in plots where, there was a reduced greenness, which equals there is some impact, but the question is the impact, is it due to environmental factors, or is it due to people not being able to plant because they've been displaced? And so, constantly what I'm trying to do is move from data sets to impact. And, the pathway is so long from having good maps, good analysis, from our machine learning, AI, etc. You can build platforms where we can do early warning, right? We can say there is going to be, or there has been 25,000 hectares of this area has been affected by a flood. There's been this extent of damage to this particular area due to this flooding. But the gap from getting to impact is so far away. But I'll show some examples of how we've kind of tried to bridge this gap, and then we'll then wrap up my talk. So some examples in Kenya, being able to develop the Kenya cropland map, cropland, a Kenya crop monitor portal that is run by the Ministry of Agriculture in Kenya, has enabled the ministry, monitor things that are much broader than the initial implementation of the crop monitor, including tracking pests and disease, and having to inform their interventions around pesticides distribution or response to flooding, as happened this past year, in addition to linking better with agricultural extension agents to be part of this ecosystem of creating data sets that are required. And I have a quote here from Ms. Jane Kiyoko from the Ministry of Agriculture, saying that just being able to pull together different information from different sources and look and analyze satellite data is, they're much more confident in their reports, and them taking many more actions due to having access to these data sets. Another example is this disaster risk financing project. So this project started, I was still doing my PhD. And through this, through my PhD research, actually, I helped support the design of this risk financing program. And my research basically was trying to determine, when do droughts happen, how early can we tell that they happen, and how can we tell at what point you need to respond, that there will be no recovery and you need to plan better for the outcome for the season. And so at that point, this risk financing project was being designed, and in the end, my methods were integrated, and due to having this risk financing project run by the Office of the Prime Minister, similar to the Kenya example, being able to independently not only source the data and work on things, this program has had impact, including supporting 90,000 households, approximately about 300,000 people, and saved the Ugandan government millions of dollars in emergency response. So the reason why it's important is when an emergency happens, scrambling to get things to support communities is really, really expensive. But if you plan early, you can save costs related to that. Another example, the Kenyan government being able to respond to things like pests and disease by connecting through the extension agents and being able to rapidly provide not only protective suits for the people who will be doing the spraying, but also being able to provide pesticides to save people's crops. You can see when fall armyworm hits, it hits really early in the season, and they can be, massive 90% damage or more to crops. Another example is of this regional food balance sheet. This is work that is still ongoing, but the idea is that once, it's ongoing in the sense that with integrating Earth observations into regional markets and trade sort of monitoring, and if it, once it is fully functional and the data integrated, what policies might be made would be, for example, if you're covering 6 countries, if one country has a bumper harvest, and one country has, so that country needs to figure out where to sell their produce. Another country might buy from that country. So increasing regional trade, which helps support local farmers, is a point of having this type of initiative. And it is possible, Earth observations are really critical in this, because we're looking at so many different countries with some different geographic contexts, and we need to be able to track them consistently with the same metrics to be able to understand what is happening across. So how do we get, how we got there in this case? Of course, there's so many things that we have to do, improving the systems where data are visualized, advancing the methods that underpin the data and the systems, and then transferring capacity, which is the most critical component, because the data set's going to exist somewhere on the World Wide Web, but if people who need to make decisions don't have access, that it doesn't work. And number 4 is partnerships. So while you can develop the methods, I personally cannot deliver PPEs, and neither can the ministry individuals who run this program. They need to be able to work with extension agents also. So some examples, things you can check out, this pipeline for developing using Earth observations and deep learning to develop land cover maps, in this case, to be able to develop your own map for your own region. You can check it out, the paper, as well as the GitHub repository associated with it. We have tools for evaluating existing products. You can check this paper out as well. You can check out the visualization for the countries that we did. We're developing methods to improve data collection. So this is our pipeline project is called Helmets Labeling Crops, and it's complemented by a pipeline we call Street to Sat, coming from GoPro data collected with GoPros as you drive to detect different crops, and then have these crop type labels that later on we use to make crop type maps. And how we got here in terms of impact and the examples that I provided, in addition to methods to improve making products, I do a lot of training in different contexts, everything working with students, not only high school and graduate level, but also with analysts, extension agents around the world, and have done workshops pretty much in so many different countries over the last couple of years. And so we're making progress, we're increasing predictive capabilities, but there is still a big gap. This gap, the big gap between the data analytics and actions and impact. I should increase the space between these two, because this is really big. We need to do better. We need to have more people look at the problems we're working on in order to get to the end goal of better analytics, better methods, better delivery of response to support farmers and communities that are impacted not only by floods, conflict, and food insecurity. And so this is kind of the loop. If you're trying to do this constantly, you collect data, constantly analyze it constantly, and then you want to inform decisions. And you get insights about what's actually really happening in that particular region. This is a paper that is under review right now, but it's also available on Research Square, and it's kind of summarizing the lessons of the things that I've learned. And so how do you create your own Earth observations, national agriculture monitoring, or regional county agriculture monitoring initiative using things that already exist? So not only do we have capabilities, we need to work better, not only collaborate and provide guidance about how to develop things that can improve our intelligence. But we need to invest not only in infrastructure in countries that are most impacted, but also research around the fundamental ways we can improve agricultural production. And some things for advancement that are really needed. There's local investment cannot be overstated, because we need to develop the methods, tools to be appropriate for the context. There needs to be data sharing and education. We need to build expertise, but we need financial support in order to see those problems through. And so there's no better time than now. That time will be tomorrow. So now is the time for us to take these actions. And with that, I want to say thank you for inviting me to speak. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Catherine. Your presentation and the talk that you have delivered is really interesting, and I'm sure that when we will be posting this webinar on our networks, many from all over the globe who couldn't join today online will be seeing this and will be like taking all the lessons from this. Before checking if there are some questions from the participants, personally, I would like to ask you like two questions. One of these questions, which is mainly related to policy influence. I'm not sure if definitely in the type of your work you're doing, there are key challenges or challenges, for example, that are how to translate these satellite data insights into actionable policies. Can you just give us like a good example how such things are being addressed?
This is a really, really good question because sometimes I think we're mesmerized by seeing really cool maps, right? We see very interesting products. We see when you read a research publication, you see all the plots and the R's, R squares, etc. So when you work in research, this is really phenomenal. You're excited about R squares, whatever, 0.9. However, a minister would be like, what are you talking about? Like, what does this mean? Like, how is this useful? They would never pay attention to you. And so being able to translate total area planted, 25,000 hectares, total area affected by floods, 5,000 hectares. Reduction in production would be you remove the area affected, so you only have 20,000 times the yield. And so you would show, you basically have to simplify it. I gave this, I kind of talked about this a little bit, is you have to simplify your 20-page research paper, your many weeks of analytics into a paragraph or a sentence in English, in words. Yeah, in words, not in R
technical
squares,
terms. Yeah,
exactly. And so the example of that risk financing project was for me the first example where I was involved in the design of the implementation of the program. So there was like a handbook and a manual that was written. And the idea is, how do we get from Earth observations to informing, scaling up risk financing? Basically, when NDVI, or Normalized Difference Vegetation Index value, hits this threshold, we know there's going to be extensive crop failure, and then we'd scale up the financing. That's basically it. And so every month, the team that was responsible for running this analytics, I created this very simple Excel template where they download the CSVs from a website, copy the CSV and paste it over in one of the tabs. And then they go in the second tab, it would have simplified it into, I think it was like maybe 4 raw table, which just said in this region, the severity is more than in this region. So we should scale up more in this region. So we translate the severity of the drought into the total population affected, into the amount that should be distributed to that region. And so there's a pathway to be able to do it. And it's the most interesting for me, but I obviously don't have that many opportunities. But it's so clear when you're able to put these types of things in place. And then you can design, like the country could design a policy that's like, well, this is the actions we will always take when these types of events happen. But in addition, in order for that to happen, they need to put financing in place to be able to implement the program that would actually help the communities.
exactly.
Otherwise, it's just a lot of intelligence and no way to take any actions.
Thank you very much. Another question which I'd like to, that we're living in an era of advancement in technologies and innovation in technology. And definitely there are many advancements in satellite technology and Earth observation tools. How can someone be sure that these innovations are accessible at the communities or at the locations needed?
This is a really, really good question. And it goes back to that, the chart I was showing. I have another chart that I show sometimes. It shows that there's this gap between data models, innovations, and impact, right? Like the communities, like where you want to have impact, where you want to have reach. You want to have a farmer knows don't plant, the season's bad, right? And so to me, personally, my perspective is that we're really missing this because there's a lot of investment in methods and algorithms and satellites. So I'm always like my own, I criticize the things that I work on the most. I think like almost like looking in a mirror and being like, well, is what I'm doing really helping? But we have things that need to be done with already what we have that we're not doing, which is the translation. And then the second thing, going back to the policy example, is that we can help the design of policies using what we have already that can actually directly result in better markets, better trade, better prices, improved inputs, because we know the areas where the need is, where the reduction or where there's very minimum productivity. The example I showed, for example, for Kakamega in Kenya, that maybe if these farmers had slightly better input or a bit of mechanization, they could increase their yield, but it is not happening. So we know, just like one of the things I used to think about is that I would know the severity of a drought in a country so far away more than a person who is in that country. So this is a mismatch between need and knowing, right? So we need to work not only with local institutions, local universities, but you need to engage with NGOs that deliver support and aid and response, that NGOs that are trying to teach farmers how to do better. You need to be able to work with them or make information accessible to them in a way that their planning can be better, or it can help them maybe raise more funds for their initiatives because their initiatives are addressing something that the farmers are really suffering. Like sometimes we assume we know because, well, every farmer needs X, Y, Z, but some farmers, I learned recently, I think somewhere they were trying to do this like irrigation, like automatic irrigation. And when they went back, the farmers didn't want the pump. And they were asking like, why wouldn't you want the pump? Like, it's like obvious you want the pump. And the reason was when you have a pump, your farm is targeted. You will be, not only will the pump be stolen, but your garden is exposed. That like people know what you're growing, and so it's not the solution. The farmer does not want a pump irrigation system. I think they preferred something else, like something you can take out and take back inside the house scenario. So in this case, if I was the farmer's son or daughter and I was an engineer, I would design something maybe that could be stored inside the house, but could work at the farm scenario. So, that's the idea of like being able to build local capacity that allows that kind of innovation. Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking about collaboration with NGOs, what about global collaboration? Having the nature of work that allows you to collaborate with NASA, USAID, and other huge NGOs. What role do you think these international NGOs play in leveraging satellite data for global poverty alleviation?
Yeah, so there are some, really strong incentives and investments and shifts. For example, USAID uses heavily satellite data in order to improve their programming, in order to monitor and evaluate whether their programming is actually working. But at the same time, in the last couple of years, there's been a shift towards more localization. So trying to design localized or invest in local organizations has become, a core component of many international organizations, for example. But the other is, if you are trying to do adaptation funding or designing adaptation funding type project, with satellite data, you can kind of understand better whether this particular adaptation strategy is actually suitable for the specific geography, and how could it be better designed? Like, where is the frontier where maybe if you approach a community where there might be an increase in deforestation due to cropland expansion, like that could be a community where you could, innovate with them around how to diversify their economy, that they don't need to actually be farmers to be able to thrive. And so I think they can use that intelligence also to support countries that are actually making a difference, right? So you can use satellite data to track whether there's been, national efforts to reduce deforestation or increase crop productivity, and a country could use that as evidence to try and get financing for, particular activities. So there's not only evidence, but it's also better planning. And I think there's a huge desire around monitoring and evaluation, like really showing, you can read. So now I'm flipping this idea of like reports. You can read a 25-page, 100-page project report, right? That says, oh, we improved the outcomes for this community and our project did XYZ. But you can also show it with a very simple, basic satellite analysis.
Exactly.
We reduced deforestation. This is the map from before. This is the map from now. We increase productivity. This is yield before we started. This is yield after we started. We have improved infrastructure. We built, maybe we've improved infrastructure and there's a lot less flooding, or there was a flood before. As a control, there's like a flood from 2022 impacted a massive number of people. We learned from it. We built better infrastructure. And when a flooding event that would have been of a much higher scale happened, actually nobody was hurt. And here's the image and here's the result. So like you can use this as a way of providing evidence that people can see. The examples I showed before of like the flooding in Spain, it's like mind, you can see better, right? And so they can use that as well.
Thank you. I have another question. Speaking about youth engagement and young engineers or students who are pursuing engineering degrees, what advice do you give to young professionals or engineering students who are pursuing careers in geospatial sciences and leveraging satellite data to address such a global challenge?
I think, for my comments at the beginning, your ideas, your creativity, your unique perspective is really important in addressing the problems we're trying to address. They're very, very complex. And every single region has its own context. There are things that are appropriate or inappropriate. There is the way policies and decisions are made. It depends on the context of the region. However, that said, you need to be not consistent, but to persevere, right? If you have an idea and you believe in the idea and it can make a difference, if you're inspired by a local community where you grew up, where, let's say, water access is a problem and you want to address water access, learn the skills, learn the knowledge, prepare, and you will have the opportunity to do something about it if you keep working and trying to improve. And the fact that it is motivated by something that is close to you personally, sometimes for me, I find a lot of inspiration from that. My mom is a smallholder farmer, so like I need to do better. And I know many people in her contacts. It doesn't have to be this way for you. It could also be that you would like to be a part of an international mission for, the first hyperspectral sensor for your country, or for you want to produce the best irrigation map for you. It's just like it is inspired by something. It could be broad, it could be global, but you have to have the commitment to keep working on that problem. And when the door opens, you will be prepared. So I say this to my students a lot. You can't go back and prepare for an opportunity. It is not possible. Like, you cannot suddenly become, like, there's no way out of the sky an opportunity will come for you to be an astronaut if you were not preparing all your life to be an astronaut. Like, you would have to be physically, mentally already trained in order to even pass that program. So this opportunity would never show up in your inbox if you did not prepare for it. If you think about it as an inbox, you would never be at the workshop to meet the, phenomenal aerospace engineer if you did not have the skills and had not learned and had not had prepared, some very short, really cool presentation, or demonstrated your robot that you built maybe to, I don't know, pick something from a field as an example. You wouldn't be in that space where somebody would be like, this is a young, talented person and somebody should invest in them and should support them. So I've had these experiences, and the biggest asset I've had is having been prepared for the moment. Like, I have the knowledge, the skills, I do, and I know how to do what I say I do. Don't believe in fake it till you make it. Be able to do what you say you do, because it's very easy for somebody to tell that you are making it up. So be prepared.
That's great.
When opportunity, the door opens, you cannot go back and learn Python when you get an engineer, when you get an offer to begin a job tomorrow. And if you do get the job because you faked it, they will learn within a few days that you were faking it, and losing that opportunity might be the end of your entire engineering career. So, prepare, work hard, and be patient. Yeah.
That's great. Interesting. I have a question from Fushara from Sri Lanka. He's saying it's time that you can help develop Sri Lanka. You need to help with the new technique as well, like funding for new infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess,
I mean, for every
please go ahead.
country, I was going to say, like, for every country, for every, some of what we've been doing, with our trainings is like the methods, the tools, everything is public. You can, we have an entire module that we've trained on. You can go on the website, you can look at it, and you can try to reproduce exactly the same thing for, for your country or somewhere you're specifically interested in. But going back to the prepare part is that I wouldn't be able to support you if you don't have the basic skills to, one, read and independently work on a problem, right? Like, the resources exist to do everything I prepared on the internet, literally. So I sometimes make fun of my nieces and say, what you use the internet for is not what I use the internet for. I go to the internet to learn, to get information, to get knowledge. Maybe my one of my nieces likes Instagram, and I don't go. When I go, my time is like, well, I'm going to read a paper, I'm going to read news, I'm going to something that enriches me. And so all these things, if you were the entire YouTube channels to do deep learning for remote sensing, entire YouTube channels, build your own. I mean, I'm talking to engineers here, so there lots and lots of tools to build your first robot, etc. So the difference is you want to do it, you have the patience to learn. And sometimes it's not that you know specifically the method, but that you have the patience to learn something that you've never seen before. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just one final question. Looking ahead, what would be, or what's your vision, how satellite data and machine learning will evolve to further empower such vulnerable communities and contribute to poverty reduction? How do
I
you
think
see it?
what I see would be if we can show better metrics or better, more appropriate measurements in places where maybe before we were not looking or we were not analyzing, or yeah, it's too complicated or it's too expensive. We right now we can do that. We can look at any country. Yes, there might be some limitations, some gaps, etc. So what I see, especially, emphasizing this point around having local institutions that have capacity to do and inform their own policy programs, I think is a huge opportunity. And I'm hoping more and more of that can happen. So while at the same time we're pushing the frontier for better methods, better models, there's a lot of work now on foundational models for remote sensing and earth monitoring, etc. Yes, they will be useful at some point, but they would just tell us, they'll just give us better information, but they will not give us better solutions. So being able to link the intelligence to policy and impact programs is, I'm hoping that more and more of this can come to life. So I'm hoping that we would see more and more examples of that kind of impact.
Thank you. Dr. Catherine, it was really an interesting webinar. In the name of WFEO, I would like to thank you for your participation and for the enriching information that you have provided. We're looking forward for further collaboration with yourself, and thank you for the time and for your presence. And thanks for all the participants who joined. For those who couldn't join, the recording of this webinar and all the details will be posted on the website and the social networks of WFEO. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you, and glad
Thank you.
to have been part of this.
Thank you.